My name is Thailan Pham, and I'm a writer at People Magazine. I'm here with an amazing group of restaurateurs and chefs. We've plucked straight out of the heart of the food industry, and they're incredibly inventive and creative and amazing, knowledgeable people whose brains we're going to borrow just for an hour while we discuss this topic of Asian fusion. Like what it is, what it's different, how is it different now than the Asian fusion you thought you knew, and how it's going to sort of change the culinary landscape. And basically start with what Asian fusion is. And I mean, I feel like everyone has a different definition of it, whether it's fusing cuisines that are Asian together or Asian cuisines with Western or Eastern cuisines. So please kind of describe like what you think Asian fusion is.
Asian fusion can be defined in so many different ways, right? And it can either be positive or negative. Sometimes being Asian fusion, you might feel that you don't have an identity. But for us, it's really about combining both cultures together. American culture, Asian culture, or maybe even Asian with Asian. So it's really about being able to relate to your customer base. And that's really what Asian fusion is. So an example of that would be tacos, what Eddie's doing today, right? So he's combining the Korean culture with Mexican tacos. So combining both cultures together really defines fusion, in my opinion.
For me as the chef, we actually have Thai taco as well. But to explain to the foreigner who actually came to Thailand, and then the way that we actually making, basically just different form. And in a lot of Thailand culture, especially the royal king family, and then we have the royal cuisine, and then 450 years ago we have Portuguese, which came to Thailand, and then bring a lot of missionary came to Thailand, and then they're teaching how to cook, how to live our life, and so on, so on. So we took most part of their desserts to kind of like become a Thai dessert. So if you go to Thailand today, you will find a Thai dessert, and then you go to Portuguese, and then you can find the Portuguese dessert, which is actually similar, exactly the same, I probably would say. So as the chef who cooking, to use different ingredients, I think that it's not really a fusion. But like example, in Thailand, we use a lot of tomatoes in our som tam, which is green papaya salad. We use chili, lots of chilies, which came from the United States, and then actually had brought it over. So if you count the ingredients, what is the real food? So all the ingredients, which is never actually came from Thailand, it had brought along the way from far away to come to Thailand, and we put all the dishes together, become like example green curry. Even pad Thai is not a Thai dish. It came from China, and then we kind of like mix it together, become our taste, and then we call it pad Thai. Same thing, we call it roast duck and red curry. We don't use oven to roast our duck, and we actually borrow Chinese roast duck, chop it in, and put in our red curry, become our red curry, roast duck. But anyway, I think a lot of things that Asian fusion, I think we using different ingredients, from different countries, and then mix it together, become our unique. And I think the Asian fusion is not really a word that I really like to use, because I think nowadays the chef creating on their own dishes, they changing, they taking the classic to make it more modern. So this is my opinion.
I think food is an expression of a chef. His life, his beliefs, his faith. That's what we are here for. So when we talk about fusions and everything, we're talking more about inspirations. That we live in a free country where we are promised freedom. So we should be free to experiment. Not necessarily positively or successfully, which we all fail many times. But I also think the most important expression of food is comfort. So if we can provide comfort, it may take any name. It is comfort.
Fusion is kind of a controversial word for me. Mostly because Filipino food is kind of the last in line to receive any kind of real mainstream attention. We're behind, of course, Chinese food, Thai, Korean, and Filipino food is never really kind of catapulted into the end result that anyone can go on any corner and get pancit or adobo. It's not like that. Not like any other Asian food currently. So Asian fusion for me is kind of controversial because I am trying to just honor what it is to be Filipino and what it means to have Filipino food. Because if I have any responsibility to help push it forward, I want to honor its roots. I mean, to the extent that chefs, of course, should have the freedom to express, and if you're a good chef, you'll want to use different techniques. But for, at least for me, in regards to Filipino food, just trying to honor what our roots are and present it to Filipinos and non-Filipinos so that Filipino food can take its place at the culinary table.
I think for me, I guess fusion kind of sounds like confusion, and I'm confused as well. So it's really, I think at the end of the day, it's a very personal thing, like Chef Vikas was saying, and it's something that I feel like a physicist kind of took the liberty to put a word to what these chefs were doing, because at the end of the day, he's a physicist. He doesn't understand, or she's a physicist. She doesn't really understand. So it's kind of a nasty label, I think, or it's a misnomer, in my opinion.
The word fusion doesn't really make sense for me as a restaurateur, and for a cuisine like dim sum, which it's a very tried and true, a cuisine that you have that dates back to thousands of years, in China. So for me, I kind of don't use that word in my restaurant, but it's merely a way for me to how to educate people on this particular cuisine of dim sum, and how to break the barriers of it being seen as a brunch or lunch item, and make it more like a Spanish tapas, where it really is just small plates and it's made for sharing. So, my thoughts on fusion is really trying to educate people on how to change something that's perceived to be a lunch, a brunch item, or a breakfast item into something that's good for dinner. Educate people on how to, give proper descriptions of dim sum. If you're like in a dim sum hall and people are wheeling carts and you kind of know what things are, it's really my job to kind of educate these people, customers or consumers, that, hey, what's that? And that's, chicken feet, or that's spare ribs, So that's my take on fusion.